Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Bruno Lanvin of Portulans Institute and our esteemed panel.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session. We're going to address the theme of future readiness and introduce the Future Readiness Economic Index of 2022. I will give a very short presentation of the report and its main results. But before I do that, I would like to introduce the distinguished panel, which is on the stage in front of you now. Knowing that we have very little time to hear everybody, but hopefully this will be a conversation and not a series of speeches. So let me start with the end of the podium on my right. We have His Excellency Minister Julio José Prado, who is Minister of Production, Foreign Trade and Investment in the government of Ecuador.
Thank you so
Welcome, Julio.
Thank you so much.
Next to Julio, we have Mariana Costa Checa, co-founder and CEO of Laboratoria, originally from Peru.
Thank you.
Next, we have Her Excellency Minister Sina Lawson, who is Minister of Digital Economy and Transformation in Togo. And on my immediate right, Kent Walker, President for Global Affairs of Google, a small California company you may have heard of. So again, with no further ado, let me get hold of the clicker and take you through a very short presentation and a few slides. The report I was mentioning is not an academic report. I mentioned that because it is a natural tendency to think that everything which is on paper has some academic flavor to it. People read less and less, and we wanted this to be a tool for action. And the objectives of the report are very, very clear. The idea is to provide as many quantitative evidence as we can that something is happening and describe how it is happening and how much of an opportunity it is for the world as a whole. This is the starting point, which owes a lot to Google's digital Sprinter framework that has been developed already for a number of years. What is very, very important is that today, in New York, we are launching the first global edition of that report. We've been working at it, we've been testing it through regional samples, and today is the launch of what we hope will be an annual benchmarking exercise looking at the future readiness of countries around the world. The report covers 124 countries, which is very much close to 98% of total GDP of the planet, and it adds to this global analysis a number of in-depth elements about the various regions of the world. Singapore comes out as the champion of this first global exercise. So congratulations to Singapore. Do we have any Singaporean in the room? So if you bump across anybody from Singapore, please congratulate them on our collective behalf. It is, by our standards, the most future-ready country in the world. The rankings are otherwise dominated by Europe and Northern America, the usual suspects. So there's no big surprise about it, except if we notice that a number of small countries are at the top of the rankings. You see Singapore, you see Switzerland, you see a number of Nordic countries. So that already tells us something about some of the aspects we're going to discuss later on the panel. I will not go through the detailed results of the analysis and the report, but which just to mention that each region of the world is very special. They have their own culture, they have their own constraint, and it is very important to add to this global benchmarking some kind of an idea of how countries do vis-à-vis each other in each of those regions, so we do that as well. The key messages of the report are again quite simple, but also quite strong. One of them is clearly that digital transformation is a key priority to be future ready. Okay? That may sound obvious, but underlined by the data we put together, it's even clearer. Addressing the gaps, that is the digital divides of different kinds. They may be gender divides, they may be age divides, they may be continental divides, remains very important. The world of digital transformation is still very, very far from being an equal kind of world. The third conclusion is that there are winning strategies. There is no cookie cutter approach. There are best practices, there are lessons learned from experience, and all of those deserve to be exchanged, to be compared, to be adapted. And the last message is that global cooperation and multi-stakeholder approaches will be a key ingredient for successful collective efforts in terms of digital transformation. So this is basically what I wanted to say about the report. I encourage you to read it, and if you don't have time to read it or not excited about reading it, we have an online web tool which will allow you to simulate the situation of your own country, of other countries. Say, if I push that button about culture, about education, or about IT infrastructure, what happens? And this is what the tool is about. So again, you can download the report for free at any point in time. The QR code is there for you to do that. And again, we welcome your feedback and any reactions, suggestions for improvement you may have. So we have about 18 minutes left for the discussion with the panel. So let me maybe first turn to a voice from Africa. I would like to hear from you, Excellency Minister Sinaloson, about your own concerns. We've seen a number of things happening because of COVID. That is, the pandemic has created new ways of working, collaborating, etc. And this is a question I'm actually asking to the whole panel to answer very briefly to start the conversation. If there was one element you wanted to single out in your own experience, in your own country, for Africa as a whole, what would be the single most important transformation you've seen over the last 2 years?
So that's a very broad and interesting question. I would say that the key element that we learned during the pandemic was the importance of collaboration and of inclusion. And I want to say that it's not about the technology, it's about what you can do with it. You know, during the pandemic, we identified issues, and then the next question was, how can we use technology to solve them? And that was very helpful.
Thank you very much. Turning to Julio, Excellency Minister, what is your takeaway from the COVID times?
Thank you, Dr. Lanvin. Hello, everyone. Actually, I think the most important thing in the pandemic, of course, is collaboration. But I think what everyone is expecting in our countries, especially in Latin America, but all over the world, is that collaboration leads to real action. I think there's an immediacy, there's an urgency in putting together new policies, both from the private sector and also from the public sector. And what we're seeing is that those traditional top-down approaches that we used to have before the pandemic are no longer available. They don't lead to real change. And that's something that I think we will see in the future. Yeah, changing that.
Thank you very much. And Mariana, okay?
Yes.
from a civil society point of view, if I may put it this way?
So it's interesting because we have collaboration, we have action, and I think that the other element that's crucial is a focus on closing particular divides that we have. And we've talked a lot about how this pandemic has had a disproportionate impact in women and girls for many underlying reasons. Unfortunately, there will probably be other pandemics. So if we want to make sure that in those next pandemics, women and girls are no longer the ones disproportionately impacted and left behind, we need to do a lot of work to ensure that women and girls are part of the digital economy, are part of the tech sector, and that are part of designing the future of our countries and our world as well.
Okay, so we heard from the government side, civil society side. What has the private sector to tell us about this?
I would try and wrap up collaboration, action, and unity with the hashtag digital solidarity. How do we make digital work for everyone? How do we come together in a spirit of alignment about how countries and the private sector and civil society can work together to make these tools empowering for citizens, for consumers, for businesses, for all of us?
Thank you very much. So you've heard everybody's voice, you have an idea of where everybody comes from. So let me now go back to you, Madam Minister, and ask you, let's imagine we are today in Lomé, we are in Togo. What could be the impact of digital transformation on the real life of people? That is for you in your daily work. Is that kind of analysis helping in any way? Is there something more concrete, more immediate that needs to be done? What would be the priority you would spell out for us?
So again, coming back to the purpose of digitization, in Togo we wanted to design a digital transformation strategy. And the first question we asked ourselves was, whatever for? Why is it important to have a digital strategy? And we came up with this answer saying we want to make sure that our citizens are included in society and in the economy. Because it's not because you're born on a particular land that you call yourself Togolese that you actually feel that you are Togolese. So we felt that digital was means to ensure that people had a future. You're talking about being future ready. And so we designed a strategy based on 3 pillars. The first pillar was digital infrastructure. And we were talking about physical infrastructure, connectivity, but also applications. We're talking about giving every Togolese a biometric ID, so that with the biometric ID, you also have a digital ID. And it's very important. So the second was that during the pandemic, we had to support our citizens. And in order to support the citizens, we had to improve our social protection policies, because we are on a continent where the majority of the citizens live below poverty lines. And so when you talk about digitization, if you don't address the issue of poverty, then why are you digitizing your country and economy? So in our strategy, we needed to think and start about digitizing public sector, all the services. Our commitment as a country is that by 2025, all our public services be digitized, but also basic services such as health and education, because half of our citizens are below the age of 18, and 75% of Africans are below 35. So it's very important to also address the issue of education and, of course, digital skills, because we are building the future. And then the third pillar is that you have to sustain the economy. I'm very happy to have the private sector here, because the best way to fight poverty is to actually increase wealth. And you increase wealth with people who actually know how to execute, and that's very likely the private sector. So that was the third pillar of our strategy.
Thank you very much. So getting close to the real life of real people, changing their life by your idea, and providing those services that are the most important, especially considering the demographic dimension of Africa and Togo, that is education and skills. Thank you. Julio, for the Ecuador has been at the forefront actually in many ways to develop, implement digital transformation. One of the very few countries in the globe to grant visas, e-visas to digital migrants. How do you see the acceleration of this? Have you faced difficulties that tell you maybe there's something else we should do, or have your priorities been clearly set up for the years to come?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. First of all, I was reading the results from the index and trying to see where the different countries in Latin America have landed in this ranking. And of course, the first country from Latin America, the first suspect, usual suspect, of course, is Chile. Then, so the first one in Latin America: Chile, Uruguay, Costa Rica, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Colombia, still not Ecuador, but hopefully here. So Ecuador 10 and Peru number 11. So we're close in the neighborhood. But we have to do a lot better than we have done. So let me tell you a bit of what we're trying to do at this moment in Ecuador. We're trying to put together the most comprehensive and most important competitiveness agenda that we have seen in our country, because we do think that competitiveness is very comprehensive. It takes everything into account, and for us, digitalization, digital entrepreneurship, and everything is an enabler to build a most prosperous economy. So we have put together what we call Ecuador Competes national strategy. It has 3 pillars as well. So the first pillar is the basic fixed factors of production, so productivity, less costs, less bureaucratic processes, more institutions that can lead to prosperity. The second pillar is trade openness, so we're trying to negotiate 10 new free trade agreements with the rest of the world. Sadly, at the moment, our 10 free trade agreements, the ones that we had right now, with South America, with Central America, and with Europe, only covers 43% of our export products. So more than 57% goes to other countries, but we have to pay high tariffs. So we're not very competitive, not in our products, which are the best in the world, but accessing those markets. Investment promotion, trade promotion, that's important in the second part. And the third part is innovation. So we call it Ecuador Innova. So Ecuador Innova, what we're trying to do is to change the mindset of our entrepreneurs, because Ecuador and also Peru have the highest rate in the world in terms of entrepreneurship, but it's entrepreneurship based on necessity, not opportunity, and we have to change that. So now in Ecuador, 98% of our firms are small enterprises, small firms, so micro firms. So that looks as interesting result from the pandemic. We have more firms, but those firms sadly are going to disappear in the next 2 years. So we have to do something now, and we believe that with this strategy, we are covering some of the basic facts. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for hammering those 3 keywords which are very much at the core of the report: competitiveness, trade openness, and innovation, especially in the direction of small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mariana, we have an almost gender-balanced panel. I'm just back from another country where I was on a panel, so that's already a good sign. But is it your feeling that, number one, women are getting their fair share of digital transformation? And please tell us why it is so important that they should.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I think we definitely need to do better. There is a gap in access for women overall. Obviously, it's more pronounced in lower income countries, but it's still present in middle income countries. And then if we add other layers, this becomes a much harsher reality. So if you're not only a woman, but also live in a rural setting, for example, then your access will be much more limited. If you come from an indigenous community, even more so. And in a world where digital is your door, to enter, to access health, to access education, to access the job market, if you don't have that access, then you're being profoundly excluded. And I think today we live the consequences of a world that was built on premises where large numbers of the population were excluded of that prosperity. We don't want to replicate that. So I do think we need to do better. It's key to solve this. And the other side is, it's not just that we need to do better, but there's so much opportunity. There's only things to be gained about investing in getting more girls and more women into the digital economy. If we think about job creation, for example, for me, the world of tech is just amazing because it's one of the few spaces where any country can actually become a hub if they invest in talent, in their talent. So in other industries, like I come from a country that's very strong in mining. You know, we happen to have gold and silver, and then that's there, and then capital comes. When we talk about the world of technology, the core asset is actually people. You know, those are the people that build everything else, that attracts capital, and that can become a major source of economic mobility and opportunity in the country. So if we get more women there, I think that's also huge potential to ensure that we overall advance economic opportunity for women and work towards closing the gender gap in our societies for the best, not only of women, but of all of us, actually.
Thank you very much. So, as you know, Simone de Beauvoir is the one who wrote, "You're not born a woman, you become a woman." But thank you for reminding us that where you are born is also very important. If you are from a rural areas, from an indigenous community, these kind of obstacles tend to accumulate and combine negatively. And also underlining with your enthusiastic and positive side that the world is full of opportunities, and it would be actually filling the gap that exists in terms of gender differences is not a favor to be done to women, it's a favor to be done to all of us. So thank you very much. Kent, for the last question I want to ask you, Google being a global company, you have this view of what is happening in all these parts of the world. We heard so many keywords from our panelists so far. What is your view on how digital transformation can be accelerated, and what to be your best hope for the future in this regard?
I think the panel have perfectly summed it up. If we go through the elements of the infrastructure, the undersea cable, but also digitization that helps people in poverty. I remember going to Kibera, one of the largest slums in the world in Nairobi, and the one word you could see across Kibera, stenciled everywhere, was M-Pesa. Yeah, at the lowest level, the entrepreneurs, the micro-entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs of necessity, I love this phrase, were using digital tools to try and connect with the wider world. So I think the infrastructure and technology is essential. The human capital, as Mariana spoke about, if you can have people who are starting increasingly to have skills in STEM, in digitization, be comfortable speaking the language of this world, I think that is a key to opportunity and encourages this optimistic spirit of entrepreneurship, not of necessity, but of opportunity. I think it's a very powerful way of thinking about it. And then finally, and maybe most of interest to many of the people here at UNGA Week, the opportunities for government to set a regulatory structure, a framework that is welcoming of innovation, that encourages foreign direct investment, but also empowers your own people in ways that allow them to have access and market to not just their village, not just their country, but to the wider world. I think the components here are exactly right. And then I should also say, the fact that we have panelists and government leaders who are themselves excited and knowledgeable about these issues is really going to be key. Because we almost have a generational shift here. I think I'm the oldest person on the panel, and seeing a next generation of people coming up as digital natives who get this at an intuitive level about how to bring their countries up the league charts. And this is one of the reasons we wanted to help sponsor this report, to create a framework, a benchmark, guidelines, and maybe even a little competition among the countries of the world to see who can do the most to help their people. Because each country helping its own people ultimately helps all of us. So thank you all for the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Kent. It's now time to wrap up, so I want to thank Kent in thanking all of you. I think we heard very, very important words in what we're trying to do in this report, in that approach. That is to highlight that competition is part of the process, that we have a lot to learn from each other. The report is not about naming and shaming. There are no countries at the top and countries at the bottom. There is a series of tools which are available to everybody to improve their situation and to accelerate digital transformation. This is what we want to highlight. And I hope that everybody in this room was as struck as I was by the fact that there was a clear vibration across this panel about the two O's. The O for opportunities and the O for optimism. I think this is the lesson I personally withdraw from this exercise. And again, I want to thank the audience for being here, and I want to thank very warmly our panelists for being so eloquent about what is their passion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.